I don't see Debbie. Okay, now I see your name. Good morning, folks. Welcome to the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee of Tompkins County. I'm Michael Lane, the chair, and we're joined in chambers with Lee Shurtleff and Shauna Black, and on Zoom with Deborah Dawson. We expect to be joined by Rich John shortly. Let's take our minutes. Anyone have a desire to move them? Shauna, seconded by Lee. Discussion about our minutes. Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? We have to do a roll call.
Sorry, guys.
It's all right. We're glad you're with us. We know you haven't been feeling well. Let's start with Shauna.
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Changes to the agenda. We've got PAR forms that were sent to us electronically, and I believe we have some copies here, and from Katrina, and then I think Norma just handed out another revised PAR form for the public safety building. Any other changes? Any public comment this morning? We, as the Budget Committee, over the last few years have assumed the role of the Audit Committee for the county. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett, and I think she's going to introduce our auditors, and we're going to go into that.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to introduce Dwayne from Insero and Company. They are our auditors and have been for quite a few years, and they just finished up our 2023 audit. And Dwayne, you're welcome to come on up and talk, present.
Good morning. Thank you all for a few minutes this morning. With me is Michaela Omasinski. Michaela is the audit supervisor that supervises the day-to-day work of the audit. So she and I are going to work together on briefly presenting the results of the audit.
Welcome to you both. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you. I've handed out copies of them to the board members this morning. You'll note that these are in draft version at the moment, so there's a couple of loose ends that we're tying up. The numbers that are in here for the Soil and Water Conservation District, I think are final. They're in kind of our final review point changes at this point, review stages, I should say. Don't expect those numbers to change. The numbers for TCAT that are in here for the joint venture are not yet final. I do expect those numbers to change a little bit. But they aren't going to affect the fund financial statements at all. They might change the government-wide presentation just a little bit. So that's really the only two things at this point that are waiting to be finalized before we can sign and finalize these reports. So overall, the results of the audit are very strong. I want to start by thanking Lori, by thanking everybody in the finance department for all of their help during the audit process. This is quite a task, both for us as the auditors and for the department. A lot of requests, a lot of documents, a lot of follow-ups, a lot of questions, and everybody at the county was very helpful, very quick and efficient in getting us what we needed to make sure that things continued to move. So overall, I think this is reflective of a good, strong audit process and a good, strong department. So we're going to talk mostly from the executive summary, which is on top of the pile of documents that we handed out this morning. We're not going to go into a lot of detail with the rest of the information. but just kind of walk through the summary for you. So page 2 of the executive summary mentions the results of some of the reports. These are all part of the bound packet. These reports that are on page 2, we're issuing the technical term is an unmodified opinion. It's really a clean opinion. It means that we believe the financial statements are fairly stated and don't require any modifications. So that's the opinion that you want to have. So good news, that's what you're getting. Because we do the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required to issue a report on internal control and compliance with laws and regulations. That report is also in the bound packet, and that report is also a clean opinion. So we had no non-compliance with laws and regulations, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies in the internal control system were noted during the audit process. And then because the county spends more than $750,000 a year in federal money, most of it passed through the state, we have to issue another report on control and compliance, this one specific to those federal programs. That one is also a clean opinion. So again, no non-compliance, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies in the control system. County spent almost $39 million in federal dollars during 2023. On an annual basis, we have to look at the total federal spending. We need to vary the program, so we can't test the same 2 or 3 programs every time. We have to test different programs every year based on what's called a risk-based approach. So certain programs get tested certain years, and again, we didn't have any findings with respect to those programs that we tested. Page 3 of the executive summary points out a couple of documents that are issued outside of the bound packet. These are some of these additional documents that you have in front of you. So there's a management comment letter as part of the report. We use the management comment letter for a couple of things. If there are findings or issues that we want to point out, things that we found during the audit process, we would present those in this comment letter. We don't have any of those, so again, that's good news. I should note that there were a couple of comments that were reported on in last year's audit report, and those were both resolved during 2023. So cleaned up a couple of errors that we found in the 2022 audit process and didn't have anything in the 2023 audit process. So again, good news. And then the other report that's mentioned on page 3, New York State Department of Transportation has somewhat of a unique requirement. If you have a federal single audit, which you do, and you also spend $750,000 or more in New York State DOT funding, which you do, you're required to have another report on internal control and compliance, that one specific to those New York State DOT programs. That report also identified no non-compliance, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies in the control system. County spent about $11.5 million in New York State DOT funding. So that's not the federal dollars, that's the state dollars. Page 4 references one more letter that's included in the information but not in the bound packet. It's what we commonly call the communication letter. Auditing standards require that we communicate certain aspects of the audit with you at the conclusion. And so there is a letter in here. It's mostly boilerplate language, nothing in here to be too concerned about. There is reference to a new accounting standard that was effective for the 2023 audit on subscription-based IT arrangements, so computer software arrangements that are longer than a year and are significant. Change the way that those are accounted for. They're now similar to lease presentations. But no other changes in accounting standards, no difficulties, no disagreements with management during the conduct of the audit. So the communication letter has a lot of, it's mostly boilerplate language, but it doesn't have anything of concern. And beginning on page 5 of the executive summary are a few pages of financial information. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michaela to take it away.
Thanks, Dwayne. So the first one represents governmental activities revenue. So 82% of total revenue in the current year is concentrated between operating grants, real property taxes, and sales tax, which represents about $194 million. This percentage is pretty standard with last year, where these three comprised 81% of total revenue. And then on the next page is governmental activities expenses. And economic assistance is the largest, representing 28% or $67 million of total expenses. The main drivers are the DSS programs such as Medicaid, programs for aging, and DSS administration. The next largest is the general government support at 22% or $52 million, with the majority making up distribution of sales tax, which amounts to $21 million. And then moving on to the next page, we're going to move just to the general fund. So we'll start with general fund assets, which had a $50 million increase in assets over the past 5 years. And this is mostly due to increase in cash and investments. In comparison to prior year, total assets did decrease about 5.2%, but cash did increase this year due to more timely receivables of social service funds. And then also due from other funds also decreased this year, which is due to an elimination of fringe benefits in the current year compared to prior year. And then moving on to the liabilities below, total liabilities decreased about 4.2%, mainly due to using ARPA funds in the current year, which was then offset by the increase in accounts payable due to increase in expenses and timing of payments. Liabilities increased $32.3 million over the past 5 years, and unearned revenue changed about $16.1 million in the current year, and this was mostly attributed to the ARP funds that were spent. And moving on to the next page. So total fund balance decreased 5.8%, a result of current year operations changed. And then we'll discuss fund balance more in a couple of pages. So moving on to general fund revenues. Total revenues increased about 4.7% or $9.7 million. This was mainly caused by state aid increase of $3.7 million, mainly due to casino licensing and social services administration. And then there also was an increase in federal aid sources of $5.1 million, which was mainly due to the use of ARPA funds and transportation funding. And then in addition, the proceeds of obligation also increased, and that was due to the subscription-based information technology, or GASB 96 that Dwayne mentioned earlier, which is those subscription bases that we now have to record. Moving on to general fund expenditures. Total general fund expenditures increased about 13% or $26 million over prior year. And again, the main causes were transportation with those echo draws. The economic assistance and opportunity increased $5.3 million due to an increase in social administration, childcare, and tourism and market research. And then interfund transfer increases due to increases in transfer to capital and debt service fund. And then the other government funds, that next section, the capital projects funds increased about 4.3% over prior year due to building improvements in the county. And then the debt service revenue also increased due to the premium from the $12 million public improvement bond. And then the special revenue funds consists of multiple funds, including the special grant, refuse and garbage, airport, road and machinery, which have in aggregate stayed consistent over the year to year. And then the next page is the detailed fund balance. So starting with non-spendable, that just consists of prepaid items, and then moving on to restricted, the public safety consists of DWI funds, and the majority of the restricted fund is economic assistance and opportunity, which represents the room tax, and the capital reserve stayed consistent at $25,000 for capital planning. And then the assigned fund balance at $6.9 million is for use of reserves. The RAA fund is for anticipated costs due to bargaining unit contract negotiations that are still ongoing. Emergency communication remained the same. And encumbrances increased due to those ARP-related expenses. And then to the next page is going to be the budget. So overall, under budget and expenditures, they were 2.5 million under budget for revenues, and also under budget and expenditures of 3.3. And then budgets were consistent from year to year in being under budget. The next page just shows the 2022 budget if you want to do a comparison of any of those numbers. And then the next page, 13, net position analysis.
So can I just stop you just for a second? So basically, this sheet says that we received, compared to our budget, we received less revenues and had more expenditures than we had budgeted. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Less revenue, less expenditures. Yeah, the bottom half shows the revised budget of 233.9 million, actual expenditures of 230.5.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So net position, net investment in capital assets. So this represents total of capital assets and intangibles, less any liabilities for those assets such as bonds, leases, and bands. And then the restricted fund did increase, or the restricted net position increased mainly due to the debt service fund, which was at 4 million last year and was up to 10 million in the current year. The unrestricted net deficit of 19 million. Below, we have reconciling out GASB 68 and GASB.
I'm sorry, what page?
13.
Thanks, I lost you.
That's okay. So unrestricted net position of 19 million. If we reconcile out GASB 68 and GASB 75, there's a positive net position of 82 million, and GASB 68 and 75 represent liabilities that don't have any statutory enacted funding, so they can't be funded on a yearly basis.
That would be like pensions?
Yes.
Right. The GASB 68 number is your share of the statewide liability for state pension systems. And then the GASB 75 is an actuarially determined amount for your liability for essentially retiree health insurance.
And then that's all I have, and I'll turn it back over to Dwayne.
Okay. Thanks, Michaela. So page 14 of the executive summary just mentions the status of some of the accounting
I'm sorry,
standards.
could we go back just a second?
Sure.
On page 13?
Yep.
The GASB 68, are those real numbers or are they just accounting numbers?
So they're essentially actuarially determined numbers. So the state system has their own actuarial calculations done to determine statewide the net liability for the pension system.
For funding the pensions, right?
Right, and then they divide that up amongst all of the participating employers statewide, and that $12.6 million number represents your sliver.
Do we write a check for that?
No.
How do we pay that?
So over time, it gets paid with all of your annual payments to the retirement system.
Okay, because there
Yeah.
seem to be huge swings in these numbers year to year.
Correct. Right, and mostly those huge swings are results of stock market activity.
Okay.
So 2022, the 21-22 year was a very good year in the stock market. And so everybody's liability went way down. And then 22-23 wasn't so good. And so everybody's liability went way up.
But you don't write a check.
Correct. Right.
What do we pay on an annual basis? Roughly.
Quiz. I think it's 3 million. Is that right?
It's varied quite a bit, as low as 7 million, but as high as 12 million a year.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Yep. So page 14 of the executive summary, again, we talked about GASB 96, which was a new standard that was effective this year. And then there's mention here of some changes that are coming up over the next 2 or 3 years. So there is a new standard on paid time off, compensated absences. That will be effective with next year's financial statements. And then the risk disclosure one is pretty minor, not a lot of effect there. The financial reporting model improvements, that's 2-3 years out now, is going to add a few things, take away a few things that are in the bound packet, some things that are going to be presented a little bit differently, but that's a little bit far away in terms of detail. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and just kind of point out what each of the documents are beneath the executive summary, since, you know, we talked mostly from that this morning. So just to point out where each thing is. So the document that's right below that is that communication letter that I referenced. So again, this is mostly boilerplate language. Nothing in there to be too concerned about. Beneath that is that New York State DOT report that I mentioned. As I said, the county spent about $11.5 million in DOT programs, state DOT programs. For 2023, we tested the CHIPS program and all of the related Pave Our Potholes, Extreme Winter Recovery, all of those programs. And as I said, we didn't have any findings with respect to that. Then below that is the management comment letter. As I mentioned, we didn't have any findings in the current year, and you see at the very bottom of the first page and the top of the second page, references made to those findings that we had in 2022 that were resolved during 2023. So those are taken care of this year. And then the rest of it is the bound packet. Within the bound packet, there's a couple of places that I just wanted to point to. So, you know, if you're not going to read through this entire 80-page document, I won't be offended. But I would like, if nothing else, that you read the management's discussion and analysis section, because in just a few pages, it gives you a sense of, you know, where the county is financially. There are some nice charts and graphs in there that are really helpful in just kind of bringing light to some of the pictures. Most of the information that's in that management's discussion and analysis is written from the government-wide perspective. So rather than take each fund on its own, most of the information in here looks at the county as a whole. So that management's discussion and analysis begins on page 5, continues all the way through page 5.0. And again, that section is very narrative. It's not a lot of heavy financial statement detail, but it does give you a sense of where things are and how things have changed from year to year. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, I mentioned that the county spent almost $39 million in federal money during the year. There is a schedule in the back of the bound packet beginning on page 79 and going through page 82. And that schedule lists all of the different federal programs that the county administered and that the county spent money in during 2023. So you can see, you know, what that $39 million was spent on. And then on page 84, it's titled Schedule of Findings and Question Costs. This just kind of summarizes the audit results. And at the very bottom of that page, you see a list of what are called major programs. So those are the programs that we tested during this audit process. So you see there are 6 of them in total: the ARPA funding, HEAP, the Child Care and Development Block Grant, foster care, adoption assistance, and Medicaid programs. So we did some additional procedures, some additional testing of those programs during the audit process. And as I mentioned, we didn't have any findings as a result of that additional testing. So again, to summarize, a very strong audit, good results, and at this point, I'd be happy to entertain any other questions anybody might have.
Let's open it up for questions. Shauna.
Thank you for doing this audit and for making it easy enough for legislators to understand. Appreciate that. I think just an observation, it's nice to see all of our numbers in one spot, because I think typically we get snapshots of what's happening, but in certain areas, like we'll get a fund balance, we'll get a month to month, and so it's good to see like the full picture. I just had one observation, and that is that we saw decreased revenues or sales tax starting to come in last year. We're continuing to see that even at a greater level this year. The one thing that we also relied on greatly for the past few years has been ARPA funds, and we're seeing that dry up this year. The other thing that you noted that was helpful last year was an increase in casino sales tax revenue. So I know that my colleagues, this is kind of the fiscally conservative group, but I don't need to tell you, but I think as we look at our budget in the future, not having ARPA funds, not having strong sales tax revenues, it's going to be a really hard budget year. So, an observation.
Couldn't agree more. Back on your letter to us, the communication, in the other matters, I noticed there was this discussion about RSI,
Yes.
and could you explain that a little more so I could understand it better and why it's not audited?
Sure, yeah. So the RSI is, it represents parts of the report, parts of the bound packet that are required by accounting standards, but aren't part of the basic financial statement, so they're not part of the income statement, the balance sheet, or the notes. They're not audited because some of the information in there, in particular the management's discussion and analysis, is kind of forward-looking. So, there's information in that management's discussion and analysis that tells you what we think is going to happen, what the county thinks is going to happen over the next couple of years, capital projects that are upcoming, debt that might be issued, things like that. And simply, those are things that we can't really audit because we can't tell the future. So for that reason, some of the information that's in there can't really be audited.
The other thing I wondered if you might do for us as a committee is we hear about you folks doing the audits and that you applied testing, and that's your job. Could you give us an example or two of how the testing procedures work and what you might test?
Happy to, yep. So I'll talk about those federal programs, but we can talk about any part of it. So really, we determine which federal programs we're going to test. We get from the county, for instance, the child care program. We get a presentation from the county of anybody in the county who receives that funding, who's eligible for that funding. We pick a sample from that list, so we get a list of X number of participants in the program. We then select a sample at random, and then we look at the documentation that the county looked at to determine that that person or that facility was eligible. We make sure that it's calculated correctly. We make sure that it's authorized appropriately. If there are renewal requirements, we make sure that it's renewed on a regular basis. And all of those tests and all of those attributes are done to determine that the county is appropriately administering that program. In the control testing, we get down to that level of detail. And then in the financial statement testing, we do a lot of examining of supporting documentation. So, there are amounts in here for amounts due from New York State. And we will look at claim forms that have been submitted to make sure that, those are calculated appropriately. We'll look at money coming in 2024 to make sure that those receivables at the end of the year were indeed received during 2024. so that we can determine that the cutoff is appropriate, and so we can determine that the amounts recorded are valid.
That helps, thank you.
You're welcome. Yep.
Other questions? Rich?
This methodology, the management discussion and analysis you suggested we should read, is that done in conjunction with county management, or is that your?
It is done in conjunction with county management. You know, we put together some of the numbers because they come from the financial statements, but the narrative in there, the trend information, the looking forward information, that all comes from the county.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lori, do you want to add any comments?
Not really comments on the audit itself, but I would like to take the opportunity to thank the finance staff. Daryl and Drew are here today, and they worked really, really hard to get this done under my imposed deadline, if you will. So I want to just appreciate all of the finance staff for stepping up and really hitting this out of the ballpark.
Daryl and Drew, we certainly appreciate your help. Lisa, you want to make any comment?
Just pleased to see the results and echo my thanks to the finance staff.
All right. So now this moves on to the full legislature. At what point will we be doing that, Lori?
It is on the agenda for I believe it's the 20th.
Okay. And we will have the final report by then? Is that what happens, or still going to be a draft?
I hope so. It kind of depends. As I said, those TCAT numbers are still a little bit in flux. So it kind of depends on whether we get numbers that we're comfortable with by then.
Okay.
Yep.
Rich?
Has anybody moved the acceptance of the audited finance report?
Well, do we do that with a draft report?
It's on our agenda.
Sounds like you're moving it, Rich.
I would be very proud to move that.
Is there a second? Seconded by Lee. Discussion. Go ahead.
From the legislature, thanks for all the work.
You're welcome.
Hand up by Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and I would second that. Thank you to our staff and Insero. But I do wonder I know this is a draft report, and I know that Insero doesn't expect that there are going to be any substantial differences when it's finalized, but what impact does it have that we're accepting a draft and it might change?
Can anyone answer that?
Sure. You
So the TCAT and soil and water are component units and blended component units in our financial statements. So you could potentially see the notes change in some of the governmental-wide financial statements, but your fund balance statements, which are the core of what we do every day, will not change.
Okay, so it's relatively minor in terms of its impact. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee? Yes. I'm yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give our heads a minute to stop spinning. And then go back to Lori. You want to talk to us about sales tax next?
Give me a second till I get my screen up here. Okay, first. Okay, so this first one is for the quarterly sales tax for the second quarter. And overall, the sales tax increased over 2023 by 1.14%, so very flat. The county share followed that percentage at 1.14%. The municipalities had a decrease of 2.55%, and the city of Ithaca increased 5.15%. The graph shows you 2024 is the green line. It's a little, what is going on there? Why is that happening? Sorry about that. The green line shows you that we're following very, very close to the red line, which was 2023. So we're staying right, pretty much flat and even with what 23 was for the first two quarters. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I think the other night you said that the third quarter is usually stronger?
I didn't say that, I wasn't here, but.
I'm sorry, maybe Drew. I guess, I'm sorry, Drew was there, pardon me.
The graph does show you here that it is slightly stronger in the third quarter. You can see it bumps up a little bit.
So this is what, 2 quarters where the towns and villages have been down in their percentage? Is that correct?
Correct.
Rich?
Just to the comments we were just talking about in our budget, we're really not down very much in sales tax. This seems to be in the noise category, but we've had such steady growth in our sales tax that maybe this budget year we have to think about giving ourselves a little bit of cushion in what we think sales tax is going to do. And I'm also wondering whether the split between outside city, inside city is reflecting to some extent the movement of businesses to the West End that have moved from Lansing largely, that they were in the mall there and now they're downtown, that we're not really seeing overall growth, we're just seeing movement. But yeah, I have made public comment about the West End and how I'm concerned that we need to make sure that that is perceived as a safe place to go shopping. That if it is not, we're going to see some potential real impacts on our sales tax. And I worry about that. Thanks.
Deborah?
Yeah, Lori, I know that you probably explained this at least once before, but I have brain fog right now. So could you remind us what the difference is between the gross sales tax, budget estimates and revenues, and the unallocated ones?
Sure. So some of the formula for the sales tax distribution includes payments to other agencies. Some of that is to the city, passes through the city, and some of it we pay directly. And so those are the differences between the two. The gross includes those monies, unallocated does not.
So that's basically the county's net, the unallocated?
It's the sales tax before payments are made out and the gross. So then those payments get passed through to those agencies.
So this is that complicated flow chart?
What we actually
Yes.
keep is the unallocated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah? I'm sorry I spoke over you, but what I asked was, is this the recognition of that flow chart that's in our budget book? The complicated flow chart of...
Oh, dear God, I don't want to even think of that.
So, but it's showing, I mean, some of the money's given directly to the towns and villages in the city, but then we've got these special agreements, right? So that it's representing some of that flow chart.
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else on the sales tax report? Rich?
I was wondering if we could talk about page 78 as well in conjunction with this, because we have a sheet from NISAC showing sales tax distribution by category. In my view of it, it looks like some of what we're getting hit with is gas has gotten cheaper in the last year. Lisa?
So I included this chart under county admin, but we're all together in this. And I also put on everyone's desks the full report from NISAC, which gives the statewide trends. But for Tompkins County, this stood out to me. In particular, line number 8, building material and supply dealers. We experienced the greatest percent change there with almost $23 million loss between 2023 and 2024 in taxable sales.
Yeah, I was going to talk about building materials, but that seems to be a double-edged sword in that you're getting more sales potentially because you're seeing lower prices on building materials. So hopefully that translates to construction activity.
It was a reduction, though.
Right, in cost, that if you're seeing prices lowered, like groceries, I don't think people are eating that much less. Maybe they are, but.
I just can't afford to buy groceries.
Well, it could be that, but it also could be that we are seeing some price reductions, like with gasoline. Certainly, I'm in the middle of a construction project, and things have gotten cheaper. Coming out of the pandemic, you'd go to the hardware store or the lumber store, and it was shocking what a 2x4 cost. And that's dropped back down. So I would hope that we see benefits in other directions as a result. But complicated.
Yeah, I guess we're not seeing it there yet.
Donna?
I think one thing that won't impact our spreadsheet, but it could impact our municipalities, is that I read yesterday that Senator Leah Webb was able to get more AIM funding to the municipalities. And I think for Binghamton, it resulted in a $1 million increase in some of the AIM funding that they received. So we're going to see that in our villages, towns, and cities. Won't impact us, of course. But.
Yeah, that I think that the legislature passed that, didn't they, Shauna?
They did,
And
yeah.
of course, if you look at AIM funding, towns and villages have been terribly shorted by that compared to what the cities get per capita.
Weren't we having to reimburse?
I think that ended, didn't it? For a couple of years, we had to reimburse the towns and villages for the increase in AIM that they gave it the last time. Or we had to pay it. Do you remember, Lori?
I'm not sure what the arrangement was here at Tompkins. I know they stopped giving us the AIM for a while.
Oh,
Yeah, it did impact the sales tax distribution, but as Lori said, I don't remember the specifics.
I think that ended, though. I think it was 2 years that we had to do it. And it had that hospital fund in it as well that we had to pay on. Deb, is your hand still up?
Sorry.
Anything else on the sales tax issue? Thank you for the chart and the other information you gave us, Lisa. Lori, you're still up. Let's talk about the investment report. We had a question about that the other night. We said it would be talked about here. Go ahead.
Hey,
You weren't here, but Drew was.
he was. Thank you, Drew. Okay, so the investment report, start with cash balances by bank, and you can see, as has been historically the trend, the majority of our cash is with Tompkins, followed by JP Morgan and New York Class. Cash balances by investment type, you can see that we have quite a bit in our checking, followed by New York Class. New York Class, which we'll see in a few minutes, is still have a fairly high return. We do have close to 10 million in CDs, which is a fairly new investment for Tompkins County. And we do have some money in money markets and a little bit, and not a little bit, but the least amount in savings. The next chart shows the rates by types of investment. So that top line, the investment fund at 5.315% is New York Class, followed by some different certificates of deposit, or CDs, by different months. We're starting to ladder those out to maximize the interest earnings. The CDARS is also a certificate of deposit. So you can see we have several different interest rates there. And then the money markets at the bottom are earning us a lesser amount, but they did step that up at the beginning of the year. So there's a couple that are doing much better than they were before. The monthly cash balance, as you can see here.
Lori, before you get there, our checking account, where is that on this list of types of investment?
If you go up to this chart here that says cash balances by investment type, you can see the third one from the left is
right, but
checking.
I'm looking at page 39. Are we getting interest on our checking?
No, we typically do not earn interest on the checking, and if we do, it's so minimal, I don't even have it on the chart.
We're carrying $68 million in our checking account and not getting interest?
It's 42 million in the checking.
On page 37.
Page 37, I don't know which one is that?
You said Tompkins Community Bank is our checking account at
Well, no, Tompkins Community Bank also has CDs and money markets and things. Just the pure checking on all banks is 42.9.
Do we need to carry that much and not get any interest?
So we're working on that, determining what our cash flow is, but our cash flow is pretty high month to month, so we do need to have money in the checking so that we can pay our bills and payroll and those sorts of things.
I guess that surprises me that they wouldn't give us interest on a basic checking account when we're carrying that much money. I mean, it's a lot of money.
It is.
Yeah. Do they give a rationale why there's no interest?
I met with Tompkins and other banks when I first started a year ago and talked to them about what we can do to maximize our interest, and I was very clear with all of them that I'd be looking to move money to where I'm going to maximize the interest. So we have been slowly working at that. We've been investing in CDs that are outside of some of the banks that have not raised their money market and checking interest rates.
Well, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I have Chase, and they don't have interest for checking. For savings, it is, I think for like every $2,500, every month I get a cent. So that gives you an idea of what the interest rates are for Chase banking.
I'm interested in Rich's questions here, and I would certainly be interested to hear if they will not give us interest on our checking account, or if they do, what part of a percent it is, and are we getting it or not getting it? And you don't have to have that information today, but I would be interested in hearing about that.
Sure.
In the future.
Most of them are 0, and the other ones are 0.001 or whatever, but I can get you that information if you'd like that.
Yes, please.
That seems awfully low.
And actually, on page 39, going forward, that rates by type of investment, it actually would be useful to see checking and show it at 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I assume you're keeping in mind, is that if we see a reduction in the Fed rate, the CD rates are going to go down. So we ought to be prepared to put whatever we can into those rates for whatever time we can, if we can lock them in for a year or two.
Yeah, so that's why we're trying to start that ladder of different rates so that we can maximize, so they're not all coming due at the exact same time.
Sure.
The first rate, when the feds cut the federal rate, the first one that will drop will be that New York class, which is our highest interest earning one. So we need to be prepared to start putting more in CDs and try to get those outer years a little bit to maintain. Even now, they're already coming down. Some of those outer years are coming down in what they're offering, but even still, I think we're going to put some out there just to maintain it.
I know you and your department are on top of this, and we appreciate that. Other questions? There is a hand up. Deb, I'm sorry, but I just want to let you know, if I miss it, just holler out, because it's with the screen being shared, your box is pretty small.
I appreciate the question, the line of questioning that Rich started, because it's just mind-boggling to me that a bank wouldn't figure out some way to include some kind of interest on a $40 million checking account. I mean, I understand that we want to keep our business local, to support a local organization, but they need to reciprocate. And I understand if we can't get that negotiated. But the other point I think we need to be aware of, as you mentioned, Mike, the Fed is expected to lower the Fed funds rate by 75 basis points by the end of this year. That's going to take a real cut out of our interest income. And I think there's not a lot that Lori can do to head that off. I think it's incumbent on us as a committee to keep our colleagues' expectations tempered by what we know is coming, because I know some of them seem to think that interest income is the cash cow that we can depend on, and it simply isn't.
I would say that your comments are well on point.
Thanks.
Anything else on the investment report?
Would you like me to cover the last two slides, or no?
Oh, I'm sorry, did we
okay.
miss 2 slides?
Well, yeah, so there's this monthly cash balance.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. This just shows the variability of the cash month to month since January of 23 through June of 24. And I did put the trend line in there, and although it looks somewhat flat, you can see it is declining, and a lot of that has to do with the ARPA funding going away. And so I will continue to expect to see that decline. And the last graph is the monthly interest earnings. You can see that the interest rates have gone up and are staying somewhat flat at the moment. The trend line shows it increasing, but as we all know, the feds are talking about cutting it, so my anticipation would be that that will start to decrease. And this just shows the budget to actual. We budgeted $1 million in interest earnings for 24, and we're at 1.8 currently.
That is really helpful this year.
Yeah, but it's unfortunately going to spur a lot of unjustified optimism about what's going to happen in years to come.
Yeah, Lori's going to talk to the Fed governors. Work it out.
She'll set them straight. You go, girl.
When the chair's up there, he always says, in his long dissertations, in which he doesn't say a lot, he always says he's going to check with Tompkins County before they decide.
Sure.
Oh, I missed that.
Some other legislators who are not on this committee had asked about this report. Can we make sure that they get this?
Sure.
On the investment report? And I think it's nice to have a little extra money here from investments this year. We know we're not going to have the money we hope for sales tax. And I know there are legislators who would very much like to, shall I say, add to spending this year. And we have to be so careful about it, even in good years. And I think that's one reason that the folks here, certainly on the Budget Committee, have always been fairly conservative about where we go. But some of the folks that are in the rest of the legislature would like to spend more money. And that's the arguments we get about the amount of the level of fund balance we keep and those kinds of things. I was just trying to remember what we just heard a report on, and they told us, oh, I know it was a report from somebody talking about different counties in another municipality, a different state. I think it was Virginia or somewhere, and they were telling us that they recommend down there, their state, having a 30% fund balance. So when we fight over where we get to, I don't think we are over emphasizing our fund balance. Let's put it that way.
Thanks for the work in putting this together. This is I think, a useful addition to our reporting from finance.
Welcome.
Can we move on to, everyone take a deep breath. We're going to do the cannabis report next.
So this one's a little small, sorry, I need to break that out. But what this basically shows is, I don't know if I can get this out of here, maybe make it a little bigger. The cannabis money for the period of March 24 through May 24, Tompkins' share dropped pretty significantly to $1,795. I do have to let you know that since I was so excited to get this on the agenda, and then after putting it on the agenda, I did get a report from the state that some of that City of Ithaca money needs to be shared with the town of Dryden, because they did have a cannabis distillery, so dispensary. So
Sure do.
I did send that to Daryl. I was at the conference, so the distribution will be made. I just need to correct my report. So you can see that's gone down pretty significantly since the inception in June of '23.
Some of the
Can someone remind me, when did William Jane shut down for remodeling, and when has it or will it reopen? Because
it is open. Yeah. No, you're right, Deborah. It was closed. It's open now. It opened after the May date that closed on this. So I think that's part of it.
So we should see some improvement, I would hope.
Yes, my guess.
Thanks.
I would just say that I know I'm a broken record, but I always say don't depend on either the gambling and now the cannabis money. They're going to go up and down. Shauna?
You don't want to depend on the baser instincts of human nature? Sorry.
It's vice. What can I tell you?
Yeah, there you go.
I think one thing we've talked about in public safety and a little bit in HHS is the fact that we have dispensaries that are going through the legal path, they're collecting taxes, they're licensed dispensaries, but we also have a handful of places here in our county that have not gone that route, that are not collecting taxes, they're cash operations, and at some point, the legislature needs to have a serious discussion on how we're going to enforce, because in my mind, it's not fair to have the people that are doing it legally, that are paying into the system, they're doing the right thing, and then having other places that are cutting corners and not doing what they should be doing. So I hope at some point we have that conversation and realize that while we see this number as indicative of how cannabis sells, this is, if I had to guess, this is probably 25% of cannabis sales. 75% of the people are going to places that aren't licensed, that are cheaper, and as far as I'm concerned, they should not be operating.
Or buying on the black market.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly about that.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat the discussion at public safety, but New York State instituted a program. It's not just the dispensaries, but there's agricultural licenses and processing licenses. And companies have gone through the process to get licensed appropriately. And the people who are selling outside of the system are selling product that is often laced with other drugs, including fentanyl. It's coming from out of state. There's no sales tax collected. And there's no restriction on control to sale to minors. If you go into the William James site on the Commons, and I went in and visited it, you have to get buzzed in. There is a guard in the front, and they check your ID to make sure you're of age. The product is contained, it's behind counters, you can't just pick up stuff. So it's a really controlled sales site, and there was a lot of money put into building that system. I think the direction we need to go is passing a local law so that the whole system is fair to the people who have decided to participate legally and to protect our sales tax revenue here. Because yeah, it's a guess whether it's 25%. I think it's way less than that. I think that because New York State has done such a poor job in enforcement, the market really hasn't moved at all. We should protect our revenue source and children and taxpayers. And there's lots of reasons we should do that, but I think we need to proceed with the local law that would give us some enforcement power. New York State has dramatically failed in their enforcement responsibilities.
I've recently seen reports out of New York City about how many illegal operations they have. It's a huge number, and they're trying to figure out how to crack down on them. Okay, that's always an interesting topic. Thank you, Lori. Can you want to talk about contingency report?
Sure. So the contingency account as of June 30th, 2024, the blue shows what's left in the budget that is available, just over $1 million, and the expenditures are at 494, or the use of contingency, and that's detailed in the chart below. A lot of activity you can see in May and June, contributing to that 494,000.
Lori, we just did something at our last legislature meeting, which a resolution was brought forward to expend up to $50,000 out of contingency. Is there any way to account for that, since it's not in the budget and it's not, we don't know how much it's going to be? How do we handle that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but if it hits the contingency account, it's shown here.
Right.
Okay.
No, this is something that was brought up by a legislator, and it was passed by the full legislature on a divided vote, but it basically set up to $50,000 to hire a consultant to work on the issue of a minimum wage for the county, which would basically be, we think, a living wage for the county, set it for all employers. So my question is, how do we deal with that $50,000 now that we have a passed resolution, or how do you deal with it? I realize you weren't at the meeting, but
So
maybe you're going to want to think about it and get back to us. That would be all right too.
Well, so if the resolution states that 50,000 from contingency funds, so what happens is a transfer is made from the contingency budget to that department's budget, which I'm not sure what department it is, but So that 50,000 gets put in there in probably a professional services line item, and then you can track the actual spending on that 50,000.
So with that resolution, we actually move the money somewhere,
It moves the budget.
move the budget line, yeah. Okay, that helps.
I wanted to ask what the lag time is on some of these expenditures from the contingent fund, because it seems to me, this is supposed to be everything from January through mid-June. And it seems like we've passed more resolutions to spend out of contingent fund than are on this list. Is there like a lag time?
So, yeah, I think it could be up to 30 days, depending on, we wait for the clerks to send us over the action items from the agendas, from the meetings, and then we post them. So, anything that's been passed the end of June, July, is not shown here yet. That'll be on the next quarterly contingency. Or I can bring this monthly if you prefer. I can certainly bring this monthly.
I don't want to add to your work, Lori. I'm just trying to understand. So what I'm hearing is that it gets deducted from the contingent fund when you transfer it to a different accounting classification. You don't have to wait till it's actually spent.
Correct. When we get this resolution, we make the transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this one? Lori, anything else you want to say to us today?
I just wanted to give you a quick update. This week I've spent in Oswego, New York at the New York State County Treasurers and Finance Officers Association seminar. It was really, really good. Some of the things we talked about was online certificates of residencies and changes in the regulations surrounding that. We talked with the comptroller's office and we went over their new contact management system, which will keep the emails and notifications current. We looked at, they let us know that one of their focuses from the comptroller's offices is they will be zero focused in on, or I should say 100% focused in on IT audits. So we could probably anticipate we will be getting a visit from them at some point in the next year or so to look at our IT surrounding cybersecurity practices. We also looked at some healthcare costs, and this was not pertaining to the consortium per se, but just healthcare costs overall. And the consensus at the meeting was everybody was budgeting 12%. Or more, even up as high as 17% for increases in their healthcare insurance premiums. We talked about online auctions for in-rem tax foreclosure properties. We talked about internal controls and cash flow. We had Dave Lucas there who gave us a New York State update, and he shared with us the sales tax report that Lisa had on our agenda today. And we had a very interesting discussion on the in-rem foreclosure process and the changes and some litigation that they've started to see surrounding that. And it was a great conference. So thank you for the opportunity to attend.
Sounds very interesting. I wondered on the chargeback changes, how does that affect us? Do our residents still have to come to your office?
So the certificate of residency, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I believe we have the option. They can do online or come in.
Okay, and but that's a change, right? We haven't been online before, have we?
How long have we been online? How long have we been online for certificate of residencies?
I'm gonna say right around COVID, so 2020.
Okay.
We started, and we're about, I think last year was almost 90% were issued online.
So what is the change then that they were talking about?
There's change in that you can't have the social security number anymore. So how do you identify the students? And how do we work with the colleges on identifying the students and comparing that to our chargeback bills? Historically, it was by social security number, things like that.
And also the new online system is being done by SUNY,
You know, you'd have to speak at a microphone, Drew.
The new online system, currently our online system was developed with ITS and our Treasury Division. So it actually resides on Laserfish, which is a program specific to Tompkins County. SUNY is working to do a statewide online system so that all counties will be consistent. There are 4 or 5 other counties that developed an online system at their own location as well. So we'll see some changes in that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Lori?
Yeah, Mike?
Yes, go ahead, Deb.
Lori mentioned an increase in health insurance premiums. My understanding is that the private health insurance industry is anticipating raising their rates somewhere between 15 and 20% next year. I suspect that the consortium will come in under that, but it may be in excess of 10%, and that's just another issue that we're going to have to deal with this budget season.
Lisa?
So when we were putting the budget estimates together, back in April, I'd spoken with Elin at the Health Consortium, and she recommended at that time 8 to 10%. So we budgeted 10%. Since then, based on claims, it looks as though the Health Consortium for 2025 is going to be looking at 12% increase. So a little higher than what we'd anticipated conservatively.
And that's just huge.
It's the first year of double-digit increase for the Health Consortium, and that it is, as you pointed out, still lower than the private market rates, but still, it's much higher than usual.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay. Lori, terrific report. Thank you for all of that. And Drew as well, that helped us here. Can we go on to County Administrator?
Good morning. I first have a resolution for consideration.
That's a resolution, Tompkins County Salary and Retroactive Budget Adjustment for the Civil Service Employees Association, Local 1000 AFSCME, Tompkins County Local 855, Tompkins County White Collar Unit number 8900 CSEA 2024-2027, and Tompkins County Salary and Retroactive Budget Adjustments, and this is ID 12541. Anybody want to put that on the table? Shauna, seconded by Rich. Go ahead.
So this is ratifying our white collar contract for the next 4 years. We had a successful time negotiating this agreement with CSEA white collar, and the summary is in the resolution, but part of what we did with this is adjust the salary scales to address some of the compression issues that we were seeing with keeping up with the local living wage. So you'll see under those salary scale adjustments impacted the essentially grades 2 through 12, and then 13 through 19 were increased accordingly. So all in all, it's approximately a 5% increase across the board for 2024, and then 3% in the outer years.
Lee.
Just a reminder, we reserved the impacts of this in this year's budget.
We did. We planned for this.
There was enough.
Yes.
Anyone else?
How many contracts are still outstanding? Is this the end?
This is the end. After this, on all of these calculations are complete, it will leave management and confidential, and we will be coming back to you. We expect to be coming back next month with those increases.
Deborah?
Yeah, so remind me, Lisa, this contract is the biggest one that we have?
That's correct.
Okay, and we've reserved for the retro, right?
Yes.
Okay, but I just want to remind my colleagues that we're looking at this 5% increase this year, 3% in the out years. This is the largest portion of our staff, and staff wages and fringes, et cetera, is the largest piece of our budget. You know, the thing that I've noticed, that we as a legislature want to meet the exigencies of county needs and expenses, and we do it on a piecemeal basis like this. And then when it comes down to setting a limit on our tax levy, we all of a sudden get stingy. And I think that we've put administration and our department heads in a really difficult position. You know, staffing expenses are staffing expenses, and if you tell somebody you've got to cut back 2% on your budget, but we're going to pay your staff 5% more, where does that leave them? I don't know. With this group, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I'm just really frustrated as I see this happen. We just make it more and more difficult to meet the tax levy targets that we set for ourselves. Sorry.
Well, good point, but as elected officials, we have to listen to our constituents, and a lot of them are suffering under the tax burden. And it's not so much us, usually, if it was just us by itself, but we have to add the city, the village, the towns, and of course the big gorilla, the school district taxes at the same time. And people are just suffering under taxation, trying to keep their homes. And
well, I understand that, Mike, but these are the same people that come in and tell us they want the county to provide this service and that service and to do this and to raise the minimum wage and to do a study and, you know, you name it, it goes on and on. But somehow or another, I think it's incumbent on us as elected representatives to make sure that people understand that these things they want their government to provide cost money too.
And that we can't provide everything that people want. We have to say no sometimes.
We can't provide for free.
Right. Or we can't provide it at all if we don't have to. Okay, so philosophically, that's all. Rich?
Yeah, Lisa, I just was curious. I assume that this is built into your budget model.
Yes.
Yeah,
it has.
As painful as it is, you've accommodated it.
Yes.
Do you anticipate us losing some positions to make all this work?
It was not built into our budget model in that way.
Okay.
No. However, with the 2% target is equivalent to a 5% cut across departments. So, so meeting that target, there you will see over target requests to maintain current levels of effort that do put positions up for consideration.
Yeah, I would offer a little bit of comment on the philosophy of what we're going to go through, that this is going to be a really painful budget process, but I think a healthy one, that we have not done this in quite a while. I mean, to some extent we did it in the pandemic, but in a panic and in a hurry. we really have an opportunity here to look at our overall budget this season in a comprehensive way, and I think that's probably a good thing. I anticipate we will come out with restoring funding in lots of different places, in lots of different departments, but I agree with all the comments that it's going to be very hard, and we have to be careful about bringing up new spending in the middle of a legislative session meeting and just saying, let's vote on it now. I'm not sure that was the best process we followed last Tuesday.
Lisa.
I'll just add a couple more comments or observations that I've seen in putting this, as I put the budget together and as we were going through the contract negotiations. So as our community has endured some hardships over the past few years and are more in need of county services, it happens to coincide at a time when we are doing belt tightening and there are increases in cost of living increases and so forth. And for the last few years, we've been trying to address through our compensation analysis and our annual salary adjustments with our bargaining units to try to keep pace with inflation and maintain ourselves as a competitive employer in order to conduct the county's business. We need people in positions to do the work of the county, and we've had the last couple of years a high vacancy rate. What we're starting to see with these salary adjustments and the collective bargaining agreements come to fruition and the market adjustments through the compensation study, we are filling positions and our vacancy rate is decreasing, which is a good thing. What I mentioned it the other night at the legislature meeting, that was one area of consideration to further expand the vacancy rate as a potential cost-saving measure for 2025, and I think that we are right where we need to be, and I don't think that we can plan on the vacancies that we've been seeing the last couple of years, which is a good thing.
Anything else, or should we go to a vote? On the resolution, all those in, I can't. Let's do the roll call. Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's unanimous. Lisa, we know you brought, that we have this county sales tax report that I guess came from Lori originally, and you brought it to our attention. Anything else you want to say on that?
I think we covered that piece, unless there are any questions, and you have the fuller packet at your desks to peruse and do a county-by-county comparison, if you were like.
And will all the legislators get a copy of that?
I've just prepared hard copies for this committee. I can send out a link, or I can provide hard copies to everyone, which...
Why don't you send out a link and ask if any of them want hard copies?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Lisa, if you have an extra copy, I can make some copies here as well, just so they have them.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany.
Before we leave, Lisa, can I ask a question?
We haven't left Lisa yet, but go ahead.
All right. Just going back to this discussion on the budget and the tightening of things. And what I'm anticipating is you'll present a budget based on budgeting units that are all inclusive of the programs within those budgeting units. And if things continue to tighten and the sales tax doesn't rebound and so on, and we continue to implement these contracts, does there come a point where we, as a legislature, may have to look at whole programs as a means of constraining the budget increase rather than incremental parts within the unit to meet the target? Just an open-ended question.
And I think we've been starting to do that with this year's budget process. And in the case of some departments, they have looked at whole programs to consider to cut funding, because that's a more holistic way of approaching it. And the same with some of the agencies through the Human Services Coalition project. And also the Norma and Corey had shared with the report and the capability to look at areas where we have allocated one-time funds that turned into target funding for both our departments and agencies, as a way for legislators to inquire and review some of those programs.
So our choices and challenges may look a little different this year than what we've been accustomed to.
In some cases, yeah.
Thank you.
I would point out it's 25 after 10, and we've still got a whole bunch of stuff to do here. So we got some PAR forms to start looking at, and we've had at least one new one handed out. Do you want to, who's going to start bringing us through these? I know we talked about some of them before with the airport, right?
There were several questions for the airport. I think Roxanne's here to respond to those questions. If it's okay, Mike, can I just tell?
Yes, Norma.
Okay, so we've taken many of these, so we're talking about the restrictions on the budget this year, and keep in mind that several of the capital projects had been covered with ARPA funds and are now going to either need to be covered with a very limited fund balance or by tax levy. So those are going to also be things that we need to think about as you're talking about adding capital, about upcoming capital, about current capital. All of those projects are going to affect either the fund balance or the tax levy, and are not necessarily built into the assumptions that are coming forward that are part of our base budget to meet the 2% tax cap. So I just wanted to mention that as you're thinking through capital.
And what you're talking about, what Norma is referring to, are projects that we're not planning on through to pay debt service.
Yes, correct. Yeah, anything that's currently obligated for debt service is part of the tax levy. That's correct. Thank you.
So we want to go back to airport first? Is that the idea? Hear from Roxanne?
Sure.
Hello, Roxanne.
Good morning. I'm losing my voice here, so bear with me.
We can hear you.
So I had sent out information, we were going over the capital projects last time. I think there was a couple left for airport that we didn't get to. And I kind of sent out how a prioritization of like what's happening in 2025, how projects are looked at from the FAA, the funding that we get from the FAA. We had our first meeting to really delve into PFCs yesterday with Norma and Drew, so thank you two for that, and as well as CNS. We don't have any definitive findings, but I think we're better off than we had initially thought, even that I had initially thought, based on there were 2 years that some of our capital projects were 100% funded from the FAA. Prior to the terminal expansion, we did have a few years where, our PFCs exceeded our capital expenditure local share at that time. Also looking forward to 25 and 26, with only having to fund the capital projects with a local share, PFC share at 2.5%. So just looking at 2025 strictly, 163,000, and we're anticipating over 300,000 coming from PFCs in 2025 alone. Hopefully, Drew has done a great job. He's been, entering a lot of stuff into the FAA financial system to get us up and square. And then what we'll do is have a meeting too with the FAA. But a lot of the current capital projects that we are working on we're already collecting towards with PFCs. And also we put them in a PFC application as a 5% local share, which now we will only need 2.5%. So that will put us farther ahead. And again, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers yet, but hopefully to have those soon. And a lot of the projects, that we're looking at, they factor into not only safety and security, but some of them, like the master plan, we're moving that through along with the current strategic and business plan that we're working on, trying to find ways for other revenue sources. And that's actually, hopefully starting this year, we've got a grant coming forward. We'll be putting that on for the F&I meeting next week. But we're really looking, to then do an electrical study will be part of next year, that we'll be able to use for other grant opportunities for solar panels, working closely with Terry Carroll on that. So those types of things are happening. I don't know if that makes sense. As far as the RFSRE building, we're also looking at ways that we wouldn't even have to count on PFCs to fund the local share of that. We're looking at opportunities to use either congressional direct spend or the sale from the land from the DOT. So really, and thanks to Norma and Lisa for the help with all this as well, really just trying to look at operating efficiently and effectively, getting the projects done that need to be done in the most cost-effective way. And, and I was really excited about the bipartisan law for the FAA reauthorization bill for 25 and 26 at 2.5%. I think that will help greatly as well.
Shauna?
I personally continue to be very cautious about investing any more money in our airport. And I hear back from constituents about delayed flights, canceled flights. I know that we continue to struggle. And I think at this point, if we're going to vote to approve using either fund balance or taking out more debt service, I am not sure that I'm going to be on board with that, Roxanne.
And I understand that, Shauna, completely. And looking at this, it's not looking for fund balance from the general fund or, and we definitely don't want any more debt service. I know there's been times where, things have been happening, like initially with the RFSRE looking at 30-some million. I'm like, there's no way. I mean, we went back to the FAA, and that's when Josh went and looked at other ways to fund it, and your help and everybody's help on the ledge to get us additional grants. Because I said, I can't do it. I can't consciously come to the ledge and say, we need to bond more. I said, I would lose my job. I said, I wouldn't do that to begin with. That's not who I am. So this isn't, these capital projects, looking at them, they're being collected with PFCs already. All of the ones that are listed, except for I think one, which is in 26, the canopy, I believe. We're already, it's already on a PFC application. We're already collecting towards it. I would not, it's never my goal to come back and ask for more bonding. I would not want to do that. I felt horrible when I had to come and ask for money to begin with. And I appreciate the support of the ledge from the last 2 years with the operating money that you have, invested in the airport.
Thank you for that, Roxanne. So did we get through all of your PAR forms? Are we okay with them? Understanding them? That's all I'm asking, not whether we're moving them forward, but go ahead.
I think also just to summarize, many of these are cited in the airport's master, all of them cited in the airport's master plan with the FAA as needed to maintain infrastructure. And for this year, at least the county, the local share is half the cost of what it typically would be.
Okay. Anything else on the airport before, I think we next should go what, to facilities? Aurel, you want to come on up?
We shouldn't be doing this.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm not sure which one to start with. It's the
We have on top facilities restoration project.
Okay, so this is an annual capital project that we've had for several years, 1.4 million. So it addresses either deferred maintenance needs or large maintenance or repair capital needs throughout our facilities. So as I said, it's been an annual funded capital project. We have several that we would like to do over the next year. Funding-wise, we probably won't be able to fund all of the projects, so we're looking at priority. We have some roof replacements, some exterior kind of facade improvements at the library, electrical upgrades at this complex, elevator modernization. We did several about 3 years ago. And so the ones that are still outstanding are this building and the health department, or whole health at Brown Road for elevator upgrades.
We did notice that the railing on this building on the south side has been reconstructed. That was a good thing.
Yeah, that was part of this year's capital restoration project. So yes. I looked at it, the final yesterday. They still have some cleanup to do, but it's turned out really nice.
The next one we had is the Center of Government.
Okay, so that project, as you're aware, currently we had put out the request for qualifications. We received those in July. We've been reviewing those as a project team, which includes county administration, planning and sustainability, solid waste management, myself, and we've received 6 responses of consultants, and as a project team, we've been able to narrow those down. We have not yet finalized notification to those consultants for the interviews, but the interviews are scheduled for later this month, after which our hope is to make a recommendation and selection that we would bring back to the committee. And then once we negotiate with the successful consultant team, then we would commence design and engineering for the project.
Aurel, how are you feeling about the estimate of 40 million at this point?
I feel pretty good. I think until we really start the process with our consultants and look at the kind of design option opportunities we have, it would be hard to say at this point. But as Rich had indicated earlier, we are seeing some reduction in some of our construction costs. So I'm hoping between that and coming up with a good design plan that we would be able to stay within that budget number. But until we complete schematic design, which would be the first phase of design, we will not have really a detailed estimate to bring back to the committee to confirm that number.
Anyone else? The one that got added this morning was the public safety building.
Yeah, so we've had a public safety building PAR form for many years. I think I've indicated, well, not to this committee, but facilities and infrastructure, that I've been involved with public safety project for about a little over 20 years to try to do this project. And so the The previous par form, which was almost had the same title, this one we're just putting new, had been the original public safety building par form to do major improvements to the public safety building, but because of funding and just looking at postponing that until we had a better sense of some of the program needs within the jail side and the Sheriff's Administration side, we delayed it. And so we did, in the meantime, we did the short-term improvements at the public safety building. And so those are about to wrap up. We should be done by early October. Contractors are taking a brief pause because it's very difficult to get enough labor during the summer since we're competing with school projects. So that project is a $4.75 million project, which was really to take care of any immediate needs as we waited to make a decision to move forward with the larger project. This par form is for the larger project, that at this point the construction is being delayed. I mean, if the legislature decides it's delayed till after the center of government project is completed and the building is occupied. But what we are proposing in this par form is that we start schematic design next year, and that has been discussed at Facilities and Infrastructure Committee meeting so that we can really get a firm understanding of the project cost. At this point, we have several options that have been considered for that project, and no decision has been made yet on which option to pursue, although Derek and some legislative members have expressed interest in one particular option that gives us the opportunity to maximize program space on the jail side, and not increase inmate cells, and it includes a pod type of setup. So this project is for the new public safety building project, which I hope it will be considered by the legislature to move forward with.
Shauna.
So I'm a little confused on what this would include road patrol side, or would it include jail studies as well?
It would include the entire facility, public safety, so it would be road patrol, Sheriff's Administration, and civil, as well as on the corrections side.
Okay, so the noted amount, the 6.5 million, that would not be for the construction of pods?
No, that
Okay.
portion is really the planning and design
Okay.
portion only.
Okay.
No construction at this
Okay.
point.
Rich?
And just my recollection is that the 4.75 million, that the planning would go forward with all intention to try to save all of that investment.
Correct. I know that actually Lee raised that question several months ago, and so we tried as hard as we could, but there are areas that we just had to make improvements in, which if we went with certain options, those wings will be deconstructed. But the majority of the work is really focused on this kind of the central core of the building, which will remain. The last phase that we have to do there is in the kitchen and dorm area, and those areas will remain throughout all of the options that we're looking at. But we've done minor things on the maximum wing, some flooring, some ceiling for access to systems, so minimal in cost. But the major investments from the 4.75 have been focused in areas that will remain throughout any of the options that are being considered.
Other questions for Arel? I think that's all your forms, isn't it?
He has the green facilities as well.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead with that one then.
And Terry Carroll, that has worked with me on this as well, is available should any of the difficult questions come up.
He on Zoom?
Could be. I
Yes.
texted him earlier.
He's at the bottom.
Okay.
It's there.
All right.
Yeah, there he
Hello,
is.
Terry. Go ahead.
So this is an ongoing project. The Green Facilities Phase 1 is nearly complete. We've done all the really construction portions of that started over a year ago, which included things such as the geothermal at the Public Works facility, replacement of all HVAC rooftop units at the library, and basically changing out the HVAC system at the Whole Health on Green Street. So those are the major ones. Then the other ones that affected almost every county building were lighting upgrades to LED lighting, some weatherization of the buildings themselves, some water conservation measures, some installation of piping, electrical upgrades, transformer replacements and such, but the major ones are the first three that I noted. As you may recall, when we first presented this as a capital project about three years ago, we indicated it would be a three-phase project, and the funding at that point that we proposed budget was $30 million. When we started the project, it was just on the tail end of COVID. Some of those costs increased, but also it accounted for, I think I indicated back then, it wasn't all inflation and supply chain issues. It was that we increased the scope of the phase one to bring some of the phase two projects forward because we didn't feel that, like the library, that those units would survive if we had to wait another year or two. So we have 75% of the additional costs for phase one, which was about $15 million. The original projection was just around almost $8 million. So at this point for phase two, what we are proposing is doing three projects: geothermal at the Emergency Response Center, boiler replacements at the Human Services Building, and then solar canopies and parking lots at 3 locations: at the Whole Health on Brown Road, at the Public Works facility, and at Human Services Building. And Terry put together kind of the estimate in the package. It would include some grant funding to help offset the total cost of the project. And so if there are any questions regarding that, Terry can respond to those.
Questions for Arel or for Terry? Not seeing any. We thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Terry. Time check. For our regular meeting, we've got 12 minutes left. We've got a huge amount of stuff to do. I'd like to extend the meeting. I wonder what the rest of the committee feels about that. Donna says she's all right. You all right with Lee? Rich? Okay. So we'll be going beyond our normal time today. And I won't set a time unless somebody really wants us to. But we've got to get through these PAR forms, and we've got to do the resolutions. Okay, what's next?
Could we do the green fleet since Terry's still on the screen?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Terry, you want to talk about the green fleet PAR?
Yeah. So Green Fleet capital program, this is how we fund the majority of our vehicles and leases. As a reminder, as of a couple years ago, we used this fund not just to purchase electric vehicles, but every vehicle outside of 2 departments. So for budgetary reasons, in order to get reimbursement back from the state and from the federal government, the budgets for whole health, just the public health side of it, and for mental health, they have to have their vehicles in their own budget lines in order to collect on reimbursements. But otherwise, all of the other vehicles that we purchase or lease are done through this project. And so the sheriff's pursuit vehicles, the highway vehicles, facilities, et cetera. So I'll just say we're continuing to try and electrify as we can. Mostly the light duty passenger vehicles, so the vehicles that you see from public health, mental health, planning, administration, those types of departments, but we're still continuing to buy the heavy duty trucks that are ICE internal combustion engine for most of the departments. And in addition, we are also continuing to buy a lot of pursuit vehicles or sheriff's vehicles that are internal combustion engines as we explore what's possible in the world of electric vehicles. So I'll say that we're also trying to get as much funding back as we can. So this year we're looking at getting hopefully north of $40,000 back from the state for electric vehicle purchases and leases. And we're hoping for maybe about a similar amount of money from the federal government through the Inflation Reduction Act and the commercial clean energy vehicle tax credits that are available now through elective pay. So happy to answer any specific questions on this.
Rich?
If you know, average number of miles a patrol vehicle uses on a shift.
Oh, on an individual shift? Oh, I couldn't tell you that. I can tell you that in a year, we're looking at anywhere from 30 to 40,000 miles per vehicle, depending on the vehicle. So they rack them up pretty quickly. We're trying to turn over our sheriff's vehicles every 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay. Is there consideration on the patrol vehicles on pursuit speed? Is that why you mentioned them for combustion engines?
Yeah, so I work closely with the Sheriff's Department on this. Right now, we just haven't found a model that we feel works for the department. Some of it is due to space concerns. Some of it is just for how long they're going in a shift. And I think probably one of the biggest barriers right now is that without a new public safety building, we don't have the charging infrastructure to go with a lot of electric vehicles. And right now, we just don't feel comfortable making the investment into the existing building in order to put in what we would need to put in charging infrastructure to electrify the fleet there. So we're being pretty cautious as we electrify their vehicles.
Thank you.
Other questions? Terry, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, now where are we going to go? We have someone from Highway?
Oh, I just was trying to put the par forms up on the screen for you, so if that would be helpful, I don't know.
Okay, what do you have next?
I had the emergency shelter.
That's out of which department?
This is Arel as project manager and Kit Kephart as the program manager.
Do we need to maybe ask Arel to come back? Sorry.
I forgot about this one. So I had expressed several months ago that I did not want to be the project manager for this, but that's why it says to be determined after my name in the form. And so I've been involved actually with county administration and others on this project. So really the description of the need is really, that's Kit that could respond to that. But we currently, I think there's an RFQ out currently for getting kind of a development team, somebody who really will oversee the project with some oversight from the county, i.e. myself, but that I would not be the full-fledged project manager on the project. So we're looking for a consultant team that will basically do a turnkey project, oversight of the project, the planning, design, and construction of the project.
Rich?
Yeah, there's a number in here, other state aid, $6,222,139. And that looked like a very specific number. I was wondering, do we think we have that?
It was indicated to us through our work with our first consultant, Joe Bose, the availability of New York State HHAP funds, which are homeless housing assistance for construction, and that I believe that number came from him as a function of what we would likely be eligible for this project.
So it's eligibility, we don't have it.
That's correct, though it's my understanding that it's much easier to find the capital funds for these types of projects than the ongoing funds, and it's kind of just a function of you apply for it and they consider them as they receive them on a rolling basis.
Some good news. Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Norma, what do you have next?
We can go back up to the highway projects if you want to do, I think that was the end of torturing Arel today.
We're going to get him a T-shirt that says Project Manager on it.
That's right. Oh, I gotta get down here. Sorry, folks. PDF file, so, there we go. Fall Creek Road.
There were a couple before, Cortland Street and Cold Storage Building. Did we do those already?
In the new packet, I've got Fall Creek Road, yes. Jeff's not here, is he? Who's here? Anybody? Or should we just talk about him?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, so there's a Fall Creek Road bridge rehab over Fall Creek. I know, I believe he talked about these in F&I.
We did.
So we don't have anybody to ask questions about it, but this is a project that is part of our bridge program.
Which bridge is this? Because it just says over Fall Creek. Where is it crossing Fall Creek?
Between McLean and
Brewville.
And Brewville, yeah, there you go.
We're in the midst of it right now, or getting ready to.
That's what, we're going to close down the bridge, or close down the road on it, yeah. Or at least detour.
Oh, we did those bridges.
Oh, wait a second. I'm off on that. No, that's this year. I think this is down between Freeville and McLean.
I thought we did the bridges that came off of Route 366 across Fall Creek several years ago, because I remember two of our members voted against.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
I don't know whether that's your district or my district over there, Lee, but I think maybe you're right. I think it is on Fall Creek Road. Same. Falls Road. No, I'm looking at the wrong thing here.
We've misplaced our bridge.
Oh, dear.
Okay, we'll figure it out. Sorry to slow us down.
Might be our dividing line of the district, Mike.
Must be on your side. Falls Road Bridge over Teganic Creek. That's in Ulysses.
That's that historic bridge that was being replaced.
That's a stone arch bridge. I think we saw a picture of it in F&I.
And that's right at the end of the Black Diamond Trail?
Guess so.
Yes. This was a project that was contingent on New York State funds, and we received notification that we did receive funding for that, Bridge New York.
Oh, federal funding?
Bridge New York.
Yes, it's federal aid.
Okay, next one is it Midline Road?
Midline Road, yep.
That's Green Facilities next.
Yep, I'm getting there.
This is over on Midline Road, over 6 Mile Creek. That's in the town of Dryden. Where 30% of our bridges are in the town of Dryden.
And this too is funded primarily from federal funds.
Bridge New York is state funding.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, they've entered it in as federal, okay. Well, we have to make the adjustments to that. Sorry about that.
Where is Midline Road? Which packet? I'm having trouble following today. I don't have it.
It's right after
Yeah, I don't have several of these.
green facilities.
This is the packet that I handed out last week.
Oh, okay.
So Mike, can you talk about the process for these PARS forms? I know that right now it's just kind of a review of the projects to come. At what point do we vote to support these projects?
I would think that they're in the capital program, and we vote on the capital program.
The expanded budget committee.
Okay.
I don't know whether we do any action on these tonight or today. The agenda says
Discussion.
project approval request, so it's just, they're just a
review.
discussion. Okay, let's go back to midline. You have a question on that one, Rich?
No, I just didn't have it, so.
Okay.
What is map cracked? Anybody know? The underside of the top slab is heavily map cracked. That's a new word.
I guess I have no idea. I would guess macadam, cracked macadam?
Well, it's the underside of the top slab.
We'll have to ask Jeff about that next time we see him. All right, what do we have next?
Highway machinery, the five-year plan. This is, if you have the machinery list up
Highway machinery. Yes,
in the operating budget.
$9,310,000. Do we know what's up for replacement?
Yeah, Corey's just pulling that up. She's going to read off the,
Thank you, Corey.
okay. Want to read them off?
It looks like a bulldozer, a dirt roller, a grade all, hydro seeder, jet rod, post pounder truck, 2 plow truck upfits, and a bridge truck upfit.
Would that all be for this year, or is that in the whole capital program?
That's just for 2025.
Wow.
It's about $1.7 million. Just
Questions? Okay, what's next? Road maintenance?
yeah. Yeah, this one, I mean, this really is good, without Jeff here to explain the road maintenance program. I know that.
I assume that these are all covered in F&I.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he talked about the different treatments for different roads that we have, and how sometimes, or how they go out and actually do physical observation of the roads to try to determine what they have to do, and that sometimes ones they think can last longer or have a less expensive treatment, sometimes they still have to go back and do the more expensive after they've really reviewed it. So they've spent a lot of time on it. Overall, he told us that our highway maintenance program, that we were well on schedule, and we're doing pretty good with the quality of our roads.
This has been supported with appropriated fund balance over the last couple of years. As you may recall, it was originally slated for ARPA. The ARPA funds got shifted, and it was put into the appropriated fund balance. So it is not on the tax levy And so this will be a decision that you all need to make of whether or not, again, using the limited fund balance that we have, a $2.4 million project. So for this committee, that's something to just keep in mind, that this is a large project that would be coming forward for consideration.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one? Let's move to the next one.
Lost track of my... I think we did all of the highway projects.
Okay, then where do we go next? Emergency services?
Yeah, I think there's two.
I think Michael was here. Is he still here?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see everybody.
We have a par form for your emergency services radio equipment. Do you want to say anything about that to us?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. So thank you very much for allowing Jessica and I to appear today. We've actually been collaborating as we've been going through the various presentations today. The goal of this program was to assist the community-based services, primarily the volunteer agencies, in replacing some of those their portable radios, many of which are end of life. But in just in light of some of the conversations today and knowing the challenges that we see with the budget, I think both Jessica and I believe that what we'd like to do is maybe just forego the request this year and revisit it next year.
So thinking back a long, long time ago, when we first put in the new communication system, I think we funded in that capital program the new radios for the departments out in the fire departments and the other emergency responders. And at that time, they were supposed to take over the cost of replacement in the future. And so this is basically saying that we're going to do that. Is that right?
Essentially. So our department is already responsible to replace their mobile radios. The portable radios have really always been their responsibility. But what we have found over the last few years in particular is that many of them have not been able to afford to replace their radios. Each radio costs about $3,000. They've struggled with it, and many of the fire chiefs have asked us for assistance in replacing their radios. Most of the radios that are in service today, the portable radios that is, are the radios that were originally purchased when we did that capital project about 20 years ago. So these radios are about 20 years old. And the dilemma with radios that are that old, we have difficulty in programming them. There's been a request to change some of the programming schematics across the county for all of our emergency services. And because of the age of these radios, it makes it challenging to do that. In fact, programming in older radios such as that, we run the risk of making it inoperable. Older radios just have a difficult time taking new programming. So that really, again, that was the spirit of which we were going into that. But again, Jessica and I were collaborating behind the scenes, and we're thinking that maybe we would just, retract the proposal for this year, maybe revisit it next year.
Okay, but we're looking at it for our okay, but we don't know whether we're going to go forward with it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm recommending that we don't move forward with this capital proposal this year, that we revisit it next year. Again, this is in light of listening to the conversations and looking at some of the old proposals and some of the comments that we heard. We think that maybe it would be wise to maybe just look at this next year.
Rich?
Yeah, we talked about this at Public Safety, and Mike, I appreciate you and Jessica being concerned about the overall budget impacts, but I guess I'd like to understand from the towns and volunteer fire departments the extent of the need, and because we seem to be getting a message that there's a communications breakdown happening in sort of real time. And while we've had the long discussion about how this cost was supposed to be carried at the town and fire department and emergency services level locally, it really hasn't happened. And I'm not sure waiting a year is safe. And I'd like to be get some assurance on that. So I'd say don't withdraw it at this point. We can certainly make a hard decision in our budget process, but I'd like to learn more before we just say, let's put it on the shelf for now.
Okay, understand.
Donna?
Yeah, I have a good feeling we're going to get some funding for this. That's all I can say right now.
Okay. I will say that we are looking at some targeted grants. We are looking at some other opportunities. Sean, I do appreciate the lead that you sent me, so we do have an inquiry out with that. So we are exploring other opportunities as well.
Well, I like hearing your thoughts on that, Shauna, because thinking about the fact that the towns and the city and the villages have always been responsible for the fire and emergency programs, and it's the same. And now, they want us to pay for the radios, of course, now, but it's also they want us to pay for the EMT emergency program that we just implemented, and we have some grant funding for the first 2 years, but we get a lot of pushback that they don't think that they should have to pay toward that. And certainly the city, I can understand that it doesn't, but the towns and villages have always supported the fire companies, so, and the ambulance services out there. So I just, if we're going to take over the emergency costs, whether it's ambulances, whether it's fire, whether it's whatever it is, that's a huge cost to the county if we do that. And I think that we have to think about that in the long run. Otherwise, we're going to die 1,000 cuts here because they keep asking us to do more and more of that.
Mike, I agree with you. I'm concerned that we have to have these emergency communications, and if they're failing, yeah. But that larger conversation about the allocation of cost between the towns, village, city, and county has to continue, and I think it has to have some overall structure, but we haven't seen yet.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
That's your only one, right? That we had?
Correct, yes, that's
All
it.
right. Where do we go next, Norma?
How about broadband expansion?
Oh, Lauren's here, probably. Hi, Lauren. Thanks for hanging in with us.
This is,
I am here, but I think Nick's taking the lead on this one.
This is planning.
yeah, planning.
Oh, I'm mixed up.
It's okay.
Little wonder.
Hi there. Certainly can help explain what's going on here.
Thank you, Nick.
This represents the project management portion of a grant that we put in back in May to the state Connect All office for build out of broadband to 781 locations throughout the county and about 150 miles of fiber. So this is the project management component of that, not the entire project that's included in the power form here. One note, we talked about this a little bit at Housing and Economic Development yesterday, is that this will come back in front of the legislature for approval because this is tied to a grant acceptance. So assuming that we are successful in the grant application, we'll bring back a resolution to the ledge for accepting that award, and at that point we'll have a more detailed and understanding of the costs and expectations for project management. This is spread out over 2 years, as you see here, and that's in line with what we would expect the build out to look like. So Katie or Lauren, if you have other thoughts you want to jump in with, I'm happy to share those. But that's basically what this element is in the CAP program.
Questions for Nick? Rich, and then Lee.
Yeah, there's a line here, other miscellaneous revenues of $409,000. Is that our expense or somebody else?
Great question. I'd have to.
I believe that's our expense. There was some question when this was first being developed about how we were going to manage those revenues. Right now, I think it would, yeah, there's still some questions about the funding in general, but I believe that was intended to be the county's expense.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some discussion about the need to make sure that people living in the rural parts of the county that are financially challenged aren't excluded from broadband, but we did not want to fund broadband for people that are fully capable of financing it and are living in the rural areas by choice and may be quite affluent. Spending $500,000 on broadband without answering that question in this budget year, I struggle with.
Katie has her hand up.
Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that as you know, we put the PAR form together in the spring, and as this has been evolving with the state and other discussions, we're looking at a significantly lower request than what is in this PAR form. But like Nick was saying, we kind of view it as a placeholder because we really don't know what the award is going to look like, what's going to be included or not included in the award, what kind of obligations we might be under for reporting. And so it's really, we're hoping that we're going to hear more from the Connect All office. They said late July, early August, so we're really expecting any moment we'll hear more information. But it's unfortunate timing with our budget. I acknowledge that and apologize for it, but there's not much Nick and I can do about that.
Mike, I'd ask if these numbers change that we have another PAR form to discuss at a budget meeting.
Does that make sense? I see Norma's nodding over there. All right.
Won't these PAR forms be part of our budget submission?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, I kind of wonder, we're reviewing these now, but they may change, and by the time we have to make decisions and actually vote on them, I think we're going to have to review them anyway, because I'm not going to remember this detail.
I would say, Deborah, that I think we should know these figures significantly ahead of any decision on these PAR forms, because we will need to make this decision, the legislature will, when we present what the award is or isn't that we get. And then
to accept the grant. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that decision will be made before the capital program budget is decided upon.
That's helpful. Thank you, Katie.
All right, I'm mixed up where we head next. Where do we go on your list there, Norma?
Already done green fleet. Let's see. Natural infrastructure.
So that would be in planning?
Yes, still planning. I thought since Katie was on the screen, we.
Okay.
Going.
Yeah, so this is Abigail. I'm the environmental planner in the planning department. This is our natural infrastructure capital program. It is a program that started in 2017 and has allowed the county the opportunity to help permanently protect over 1,500 acres. That helps us, we support municipal partners and organizations like the Finger Lakes Land Trust. This has annually been a $200,000 allocation to that program. But I will note that this is not projected to be funded again until 2027. So there is no addition in this budget year.
Question?
I didn't understand that. It's showing $1.4 million in Oh, this
So we
year?
have a,
Okay.
we have a current balance, but there will not be addition to that this year.
Are we spending that this year?
It is a standing balance. We have about $1 million in that at the moment. We have one application in for a project, but we have not vouchered any other expenses this year.
And why would there be no expense
5
in?
last year.
Why would there be no expense in 25, 26?
It depends on applications from our municipalities and other partners that are eligible, and we haven't received any this year.
Well, and also, Rich, this is one that, that Lisa last year recommended pausing funding or additional funds going into it until future years. So it was seen as kind of a cost-saving measure to not continue to fund it when it has a balance that high, stop the $200,000 a year coming into this fund until we start to see that money significantly drawn down.
Thank you.
Anything else on this one? Thanks for the explanation. What's next?
We're almost there. I think the next, recycling waste management has 2 projects right after
Okay,
this one.
I kind of short-changed Lauren a little while ago, and.
Do you want to go back to?
Can we do
yeah,
his?
sure.
Yeah, because I did call on him, and then I had to flip over. Sorry, Lauren.
That's okay, Mike. This is our standard ITS infrastructure capital program that we use to replace all of our IT equipment, including the computers for all the departments. Next year, we're going to focus on phone systems and a new patch management system. We'll be upgrading a bunch of fiber connections to some of our buildings, and we're in need of replacing some uninterruptible power supplies for our data center here in the downtown location, probably replacing the batteries, and we'll be looking at changing our internet load balancing devices as they're getting ready for replacement. And as Lori mentioned, we're always trying to stay patched and ready for any sort of comptroller IT cyber audit, and that's always a challenge, is all the equipment and software we have to, to stay current and patched. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much, Lauren.
Sure. I do want to give a shout out to, before I leave, to the ITS team for, you probably heard about the CrowdStrike global outage. And just want to say that the ITS team was amazing. We started working on it at wee hours in the morning, and had Kim took the short straw, and she drove in that morning and physically had to get all of our servers back up and running. And we had most of that stuff up by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So when people came in, and then we had about 100 workstations that needed to be touched the next day. And my staff was diligent and got through it, and departments were great, bringing us food and all sorts of things. So just wanted to say that out loud.
Thank you for that. And we really appreciate at the committee level when a department head tells us about things like that, because we don't always hear it, and not only your department, but other departments. And so we're very pleased, and thank you to your members, to the members of your staff for that.
Thank you.
All right, now where are we?
The last 2 are the recycling waste management
I thought I saw Leo. Was he here?
He was here. I think he's still here.
Yeah. How you doing, Mike?
Well, good morning, Leo. Thanks for hanging in with us here.
You're welcome. So this landfill site improvement, this is a new project that we're hoping to start in 2025. It's dealing with the 2 landfills, Caswell and Hillview, closed landfills, I should say. The main driver of this project is on the heels of a leachate collection system assessment at both landfills that was performed August of 2023. The life expectancy of those systems is 30 years, and we're at or near that end of life. So some of our projects or the task rather, that we would be looking at both landfills would be leachate tank cleaning and the conveyance line cleaning. We'll also have to replace a gate valve replacement. I can go in more detail with why if you want, but and then tightness testing of the tanks. We also want to run an electric service line to these tanks. That would be given us the opportunity to put in or install remote monitoring of those tanks. Remote monitoring would allow us to know the level of the leachate in the tanks right at our desk, and that would really reduce a lot of staff time going out there, and it should at some point reduce cost of the hauling as well. So those are a few of the things that we have planned. 2025, we would be looking just at Caswell doing those things. 2026, we would move out to Hillview and start those tasks. 2027, we have that budgeted for a tank replacement, but we would wait to determine which one we would do first, Caswell or Hillview.
Leo, on Caswell, I remember when the leachate system was, or when we put the cap on it or something, your department approached the village of Freeville about the possibility of piping the effluent to their wastewater treatment plant. And I know that didn't work out, but I wondered if there's been any thought of talking to them again about whether it would make any sense to help them with their costs. I think they were going to make some improvements over there, or whether we just shouldn't do that.
Well, I'm not overly familiar with that. It's something we certainly could pull up and take a look at. I'm sure B&L has some pretty good records of it too. I know we have looked at on-site treatment at Caswell, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. But that didn't pan out, I believe, from a cost standpoint. Yeah, but yeah, not familiar with what you're talking about, but that's interesting.
Well, if you're ever talking with Barbara, you might ask her about it, because I think she was involved with it back then.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I do speak with her on occasion every couple months. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that'd be just a thought.
Yep.
Thank you. And then I think you've got another par form here. Any other questions on this one? I think we've got another par form here.
Yeah, this one's an easy one. So this one is coming to the last year of this project, and the money that's left in there, the balance, I believe, is $50,000 roughly. That will just be used for engineering, any engineering oversight that carries over from our 2024 project at the facility. And then that project would be closed out.
Questions? Lee?
Kind of a Norma question, I think. These are all covered underneath solid waste.
The enterprise fund,
revenues.
yeah, yes.
No local.
No local share, right.
And then this provides us a comprehensive list of everything in the capital program today.
Yes, should.
Pipeline for a couple of years out, 5 years out, right?
Yeah, yes.
For anybody that's out there watching us.
Thanks for all the work on the forms. Appreciate it. Okay, let's see if we can burn through some of this other stuff here. Next is our report from our Human Resources Commissioner, Ruby Pulliam.
And yes, we can run through this really quickly. Do you want to start with the resolution first?
We can.
Okay.
Someone want to move amending Resolution 2024-111, appropriation from Contingent Fund, Human Resources Department, County Administrator Search, and establishing the starting salary. That's ID 12639. Been moved by Rich. Is there a second? Seconded by Shauna.
Thank you. This is really a clarifying resolution to correct the previous one that the legislature approved. And the previous one, $180,000, was listed as the 2025 salary when it's actually the starting salary with an upgrade to 5% the work rate. So this resolution clarifies that we are hiring at $180,000. It's the starting salary, not the 2025 ending salary.
Okay. Discuss or questions on that? Ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you. And then I just have a few brief announcements. The HELP program, we're making progress with that. To date, we've submitted 77 titles for approval through that program. We're preparing to submit our 4th round of titles for that. We are updating the number of titles that have been approved and those that have been appointed from that, so I'll get that number to you at our next meeting. We've begun the performance evaluation process for direct reports. The review panels are polling for dates now for the initial dialogue. And today, the state civil service staff will be conducting a joint training and information session for the city of Ithaca and the county that begins at 1 o'clock, although we'll be there at 12:30 with a light lunch prepared or provided by the county. It's at the library, the Borg Warner Room. And the last one is our county employee picnic, Wednesday, October the 21st at Treatment Park. You must RSVP in order to receive the parking pass, which serves as your entrance pass. If you have an Empire State Pass, you may use that, but you will also need to check in with us in order to get the meal tickets. Again, that's August 21st. And then I'll let Larry provide his report.
Real brief, the human resources numbers are right in line with the previous month, so there's nothing to report there. And our county administrator search is well underway. We have conducted a couple of screening interviews so far, and the final filing date is the 18th of August. And I will be following up with the search committee this afternoon, as I met with the recruiting firm yesterday late.
That's a meat-filled report from the two of you. Questions?
Lisa's report under the resolution for white collar indicated you've had significant progress on stabilizing the vacancies and getting positions filled and retaining people. So it sounds like you've had a really productive year thus far.
Yes, a lot of in-person outreach, hand-holding, convincing. We're trying to do our best to make sure those positions are filled.
And as a footnote to that too, many of the departments that we've been talking to have cited the HELP program, that added flexibility with civil service, as really helping them.
Okay. I don't have a formal report today. I just wanted to keep us thinking about the EBC process. I wondered, Lisa, what date you're aiming for to have your letter to us, that you do an annual letter to us to start the budget process.
My plan is to present the budget with that letter on the for the September 3rd legislature meeting, the day after Labor Day.
Are you going to do a press conference before that? We've done, and sometimes in the past we've done that, or not?
I haven't done it in recent history, but we could consider.
Okay, so let's, maybe we can kick it around.
Sure.
And which day did we end up?
On screen for
Oh, yeah.
presentations, and you asked to discuss that here.
So apparently, Katrina, you said the request was that when our departments are coming in, each of the departments, there would be a timer on their screens, like a countdown thing. I don't know how the rest of you feel. I was very reluctant about that. I don't think we want, does anybody think we should be doing that? I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down on it, so let's not plan on that.
You got Rich right there.
I'm not saying put the timer up, but I always find it difficult where we have an agenda with time on it and we totally deviate.
Well, if I could,
yeah.
I just want to say one of the things we've tried to do during the presentations is ask legislators only to ask relevant questions if they have questions, not to get into political discourse about the department or the programs or the budget or whatever.
Yeah, that the questions should be informational. They shouldn't be for or against the particular item. Yeah.
Shauna?
I think also in years past, we've had discussion that has gone too deep into the programming. And the good thing is we have seasoned legislators here who have, this is not their first year. Typically, like the first year of a new legislator, there's a lot of questions, which is good. But I think we've gone down rabbit holes as far as like what programs, just so deep. And so I think if we could keep it surface level, if there are questions from legislators, they can always email. We're not voting on programs that evening that we hear the presentation. And I think it's all right for legislators to reach out for clarification.
Okay. I think you got your answer, Katrina.
Thank you. There was one other question that we had discussed at the last meeting about adding an additional EBC meeting to our calendar in case we need it. The calendar's very tight for September.
So I think you told me that there was only really one day that might even work?
Yes.
And what was that date?
That was September 24th, that evening.
Do we want to schedule another EBC meeting?
Norma.
So, yeah, and just full disclosure, I'm the one who asked about the timer. And the only reason I asked about the timer is because we wanted to keep these meetings, as I understood, between 2 and 3 hours. And right now, we are pushing 3 hours on almost every single one of them. So while I was not talking about restricting people's ability to talk about a department, I was kind of trying to help us with a timeline and be able to kind of try to keep on schedule as best we could. So that's the reason why.
And we appreciate that.
That was the reason why we were also asking about whether we should have an additional evening, because if we do get long on talking and we don't have any kind of gauge on when we should stop, then it's a good chance we'll need another day.
I will try to impose discipline, but I can't always promise that they will listen to me. Rich?
I think there's no harm in putting it on the calendar and pegging the.
Okay, we have a meeting scheduled on the 26th. So this would essentially, I think, move everything from the 26th to the 24th, and the meeting on the 26th would be our extra.
That what we want to do?
I think it would be prudent, given what we've asked our departments to do with the budget. And
we can always cancel a meeting if we need to.
It feels like you got something for free. Yeah.
Nothing is free.
Is that okay? Does that mean that week we have a meeting every night?
We have an EBC meeting on Monday. It would be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday meeting evenings, yes.
All right. So I guess we're going to do that?
I've scheduled according to the schedule that we have, and I'm planning to be, I have to be in Syracuse that evening of the 24th. So. These are presentations, so you don't necessarily need me, but if that's why.
We have to do what we have to do, and if you have to be there, you have to be there. So we know you have two very competent deputies.
Absolutely do.
Plus another budget officer who's very competent.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess we're going to do that. Anything else on that? I don't see Veronica here, is she?
Mike? Veronica actually emailed me and said that she would be unable to provide the update today.
So we'll just wait for next month on that WDIC update. We got some resolutions. Budget adjustment and contingent fund appropriation, Department of Social Services. Purchase of X-ray machine for enhanced security at the Human Services Building. I think that went through F&I. I think we talked with that. That's 12568. Is there a motion? Shauna, seconded by Rich. Discussion on this one. All right, let's vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I vote yes. B is appropriation from contingent fund, replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement, Sheriff's Office, ID 12566. Rich moved it. Who seconded it? Lee seconded it. Discussion? Let's vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. C is authorization to increase hours to workforce development, career center positions, Tompkins County Workforce Development. That's ID 12626. Who's moving that? Rich? Is there a second? Seconded by Shauna. Do we all know what that's about? Rich?
The last resolve says further that no additional funds are required to accommodate this change. Is that true this year, or will this be true going forward?
The department director has said that it will be true in both cases this year and going forward. They can cover this in their budget.
Thank you.
Ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Budget adjustment, Highway Department, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds for the purchase of highway equipment, 12643. And Lee. Discussion on that one. Okay, Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. The last one is creation of position, Department of Veterans Services, Veteran Service Officer, 12638. Please move that. Is there a second? Seconded by Rich. Discussion on that one.
Yes, I did not understand the second whereas. We're recreating a position due to its conversion to a position of project assistant. I just, what are we doing?
Great question. So this is, it's a truly an administrative issue that we're trying to resolve. They have a budgeted Veteran Services Officer for 2024. Also, they have a, is it project assistant or project assistant? They had a staff person who went out on leave and needed to hire someone temporarily to cover the office, and in so doing, inadvertently converted the title Veteran Services Officer to hire for the temporary position. And that position will end, and they need to create the Veteran Services Officer title back to hire for that permanent position.
We're not adding a head count.
No, we're not.
Will this have any impact on our budget?
No,
Not now or not going forward?
that's correct.
Okay, so it's budget neutral.
It's budget neutral, yes. This position has been vacant, and they would like to fill it, and they have the funding authorized to do it. They just no longer have the title.
Thank you.
Ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. I think we made it, thanks to everyone's patience and working through here. And remember, legislators get extra pay for this.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Nothing from nothing is nothing, you know. But why don't we just go ahead and adjourn, and with my thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye.